Hey everybody, it's Dan from the Danout Show, and this is going to be a Dan Out. And what a Dan Out is when I first started doing my post on Facebook, it was a real long post that was basically a Dan Out rant, and it was a rant about stuff that I just wanted to talk about. And the Dan Out with the peace sign at the end of it came into the play, where you see a lot of my slides at the end of the shows are with the Dan Out. That's where that started from, and this is one of those. Which could be one of those, um, primarily because I wanted to do the at the end of each series. I'm gonna have the Dan Out, which is could be the show, like the video blog part of it, where you're gonna watch me talk to you about whatever I think, whatever I've written in the past I've not posted yet, and this is what that's gonna be. So if you're ready, let's get into it. All right. uh, so not too long ago, I was in church. I was walking down a church aisle, and if you ever go to a church on a regular basis, you see a lot of people, a lot of the same faces on all the time, right? And so at this particular Sunday, there's a group of people or a few people that I didn't recognize. And when I walked by them, I heard them were talking amongst themselves, and they said, "Oh, this is a conservative church." And I laughed to myself, and I was like, "Yeah, the Catholic Church is very conservative comparison to the other non-denominational .com Protestant and Baptist churches. It's very, very conservative." And if you, in case you have never been to a Catholic mass, you see how conservative it is from the procession in. The procession is when the father and deacon, the acolytes, and the altar servers walk in. Uh, basically it looks like a parade of people walking down an aisle, kind of like you're seeing like when someone gets married, you see them walking, you see the bride walking down the aisle. It's the same principle, but in this case, you have a cross, and then the book. They hold it way up over their head like that, and then officers are holding little candles like this, and it's kind of walking down, moving around, and they're all dressed up in these robes, which each robe has a certain name. The one robe, the father wears a robe that has a certain name to it. The deacon has a robe that has a certain name to it. The acolytes have one. The altar servers have one, and that's a tradition that's been going on since. Well, I can't say when actually Jesus did it, because Jesus didn't do that. The only thing Jesus was known for doing was the Last Supper, which during the Mass we witness that. That's a part of communion, where the Father raises his hands up over his head and said, "Take this, all of you, for this is my blood. Take this, all of you, for this is my body." And then everybody lines up and receives the blood and body of Christ. That's what he did. Okay. It was about 300 or 400 years after the fact that when the church became the church and the Catholics became Catholic in Rome, um, and when Constantine said, "Okay, this is the way it is, where this is how the church is doing it," then everything else kind of fell into play. There's scripture readings, the gospel readings, which is the same thing, and then the homily or the sermon, and and it goes from there. So all that was added much further, much later on, 300 or 400 years after Jesus had died and crucified and rose from the dead, rose from the grave, and so that's great. That's fine. That's a fantastic. That's a beautiful tradition. And if you go into some of the older parts of the country, like you go to some of these really old churches that have been around for a couple hundred years, or as long as America's been around, some of these churches are very, very beautiful. They're very ornate. They have a lot of gold and shiny stuff all around it. If you ever watched the Christmas Mass on TV on Christmas Eve, you see the Christmas Mass at during the Vatican as in St. Peter's, and that church is the same thing. It's very big, it's very beautiful, and it's all inspiring. One of my dreams, one of my bucket lists, is to go to a Christmas Eve Mass at St. Peter's Square and watch the Pope do the mass. I think that would be a fantastic thing. That's one of my dreams, so to speak. Um, and so then you have these other churches down the road here, and like where I live, I think we counted 15 churches within a 2 mile area, and that 15 churches, uh, there's several .coms, and there's several and there's a big giant Baptist. We call it the Baptodome. It's really called Prestonwood Baptist Church, but it looks like a coliseum. It's so freaking huge. When you go inside there, it's the same. It's just this giant big dome, and it's got these jumbotron screens that you're seeing the music, and you're seeing what's going on. And when the pastor of that church, he throws it up there when he's talking about the scriptures are seen up there on a screen, so you can follow along what's going on. And that's where this comes into. That's where this conservative comes into. So the Catholic Church is very, very conservative, which is a good thing. It's a tradition that's been going on for a couple thousand years now, and where you have these other churches down the road from our Catholic Church that have been there for, I don't know, well, just the church in general, just that particular denomination has been there for only since started around 1500. Yes, sorry to burst your bubble, but if you think you're the first church to ever start Christianity, I'm sorry, you're wrong. No, your church actually didn't start until after 1500. And there's two parts to that, actually. I'll go into it real fast. King Henry couldn't get divorced from one of his wives because she couldn't bear him a child. And when he went to the Pope at that time to ask for permission to get divorced, the Pope said no, because Catholics don't believe in divorce. Regardless of what the problem is, regardless of what the situation is, we don't believe in divorce. And so when King Henry was told no, he's like, well, I'm the king. Why can't I get divorced? I'm the king of England. I can do whatever I want to do. You know what? Fine. See you later. And he takes off. He leaves. He takes all the churches in England that were Catholic. He either destroys them, or he takes all their stuff in the church, all their gold, all their beautiful pieces, and takes it and says, this is now mine because it's on England, and I'm the king of England. Therefore, I am the king of England, and I am England, and what's on this continent, what's on this nation is mine. And so he said, y'all can take your Catholic Church over there. I'm divorcing this woman. I'm going to marry this other woman, and that's it. So that's how that started. On the other side of Europe, this guy named Martin Luther, who wrote this 95 Theses, decided to say, well, I don't like the way the church does it either. The Catholic Church does it either. So I'm going to do my own thing. And then therefore started the Lutheran movement, Martin Luther. So the Lutheran movement happened, and that divided that. And that's where you start getting your Baptists after that. It's in the same, I actually have a timeline I should have showed you. I should have posted it up here, but another day. We'll get into a whole lot more later. But he divided the church in Europe, and it was really easy to convince people back then. As long as you were of some kind of nobility, you could tell somebody the world was flat, which they did a lot, and people believed it. Whether they knew any better or not, they're just like, all right, let's go with it. So that's the way it worked. And so the Catholic Church was on pace from the time of Jesus, from 33 AD all the way down to 1500s, and everything started branching off one after a time, and that's where he got to the division in the church, and all these other denominations started popping off, and the next thing you know, it's no longer one church, it's multiple churches, multiple denominations, and everybody's believing something a little bit different. Okay, so that's how that all started. There's a lot more detail into there. We'll get into it in another video blog, but that's the way that works. Go back to the conservative church of Catholic Church. Okay, so the Catholic Church is very conservative, and the other churches over here are not conservative. They've been what I call preaching from the hip. Now, a lot of times, I want to listen to what the pastor preaching from the hip says about this, because they're married, they have children, they have families, and they're living in the moment. They're living in the now. They're living in everything that says about a human being. Where where a preacher or father or priest of the Catholic Church is not married. They took a oath of celibacy, and their wife is the church. So they're married to their church. So they're taught about family through the church's eye, through the Catholic Church's eye, not through pure experience. Okay, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying nothing about it. I'm not trying to diss or dog the Catholic Church in any way. I'm just saying that that's just the way it is. So don't get me wrong. I love the Catholic Church. I'm Catholic. Could I ever be a priest and not be married? Nope. I like being married. I'm married and I absolutely love it. I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. I had one awesome father. He said, I traded in the idea of dating and marriage problems for a whole nother set of problems. And I can only imagine. Okay. So when you go to a .com church or a Baptist church, those pastors, they're married. A lot of times they are married and they have families, and they go to a house where a lot of times the church itself pays for that house and pays for all the bills, and it just goes on and on and on. Excuse me. Okay, so the point of this long thing is what makes these other churches work compared to the Catholic Church today. What makes it work? Well, I can tell you one thing. If you've been watching my show or listening to my show, I've been playing a lot of music that are Christian-based music, and it rocks, right? Like Third Day with Gone, Jeremy Camp with, I forget what the song was called, but, and then yesterday I played a band called Plum with Need You Now. Sorry, I forgot, but that's what the song's called, Need You Now. It's a very beautiful song. It's about prayer. And then the day before that, I played something else. I can't remember what I played, but those are Christian-based songs, okay? The Catholic Church does not play those songs. They play hymns. They sing hymns and stuff. Hymns. Some of the hymns have been written since when way back when Constantine was around, okay? And what those hymns are, a lot of the hymns in the hymn books, it's like a big book because it says hymns on it. A lot of those hymns are they're stories of the church, or stories of what happened in church. And a lot of times that's how the story was told in that time period when people didn't know how to read or write. They would sing this song, they would sing this story, and it caught on, and people were able to remember it that way. So if you ever go into a Catholic church or an Orthodox church of some kind, and they're singing a hymn, that hymn is actually a story of what was going on at that time, and it was a way that they taught each other the stories of what happened. So, but you will never hear Third Day being jammed out on their speaker system inside the church, in a Catholic church. Nope, absolutely not allowed. But if you go to the Baptist church down the street, or the .com church, or the non-denominational church, you will. And that's what makes it work. What makes it work is because it's those churches stay relevant to the time. It's relevant to what is going on today in today's world. Okay? Like I said, I'm going to go, a lot of times I like to watch other Christian television with like other evangelists like Greg Laurie. He's able to put in a concept, like a lot of these pastors are, they're able to put it into a concept that they actually live on a regular basis. When they leave the church, they go home at night, they go to their wife and kids, and wife is making dinner, or they're going out to eat. Which, yes, the Catholic priests do the same thing, but the difference between a Catholic priest and a non-denominational pastor is the Catholic priest goes to bed alone. People come over, they'll cook dinner for him. He's allowed to go out, go to dinner, to restaurants, whatever, but he always goes home alone. Okay? Every single day. But the pastor at the Baptist church or the non-denominational .com churches, if they're married, they go home to the wife. They go home to their family, and they live a regular, average Joe life. Now, the question is, and this is a tough question because I've gotten a lot of great advice from my father about marriage, but if you had to listen to somebody about marriage advice, would you listen to somebody who's never been married or somebody who's been married for a long period of time? So that's where that's where the division is in that part. So so go back to the music, and I love the Christian music, man. I really, really do love it. The Christian music stays relevant today because it tells stories about what's going on today. You'll have the Smith family driving down the road in a van, jamming out to Third Day or Switchfoot or Mercy Me or Plum or all these other great Christian rock bands. They'll be jamming out, rocking out hard, and everybody's be singing that song. But you won't have the Smith family jamming out to a 1600-year-old hymn. I'm going to tell you something. Some of those hymns are horrible. They tell a great story, but there's no way you can. I mean, somebody could. Some smart composer could put a rock tune to it, but chances are that's not going to happen because nothing happens in the Catholic Church without the Pope's permission. And if he says no, if it never gets brought up, then it doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Okay, and that's with everything inside the church. Get some more water. All right. So when we are talking about the different churches and the different traditions of church, tradition is a beautiful thing. It is absolutely gorgeous. That's why we have Christmas today. That's why we have Thanksgiving and Halloween and all these great, wonderful holidays. We have them all because of tradition. And there's nothing wrong with tradition. Tradition is beautiful. Sometimes, though, it's a good idea to tweak it just a little bit to remain relevant to today's time. Give you an example. Halloween's coming up, and a lot of Christians, depending on what denomination they are, do not celebrate Halloween. They think it's a pagan day. No, it's not a pagan day. It's not a pagan holiday at all. In fact, it's the ending of the harvest season. On a calendar. It was beginning. So like summer solstice ended, fall began, and fall solstice ended, and then winter began. Halloween, October 31st, between October 28th and to November 1st was the end of the fall solstice where winter began. So all the harvests at that time, between those times, were brought in before the winter happened, which was November 1st. October 31st, November 1st is when they got a harvest in. So when they were bringing these beautiful meals when they were bringing all these beautiful meals and bringing this beautiful harvest in from the fields, these towns over there, in the Celtic and the British and all across parts of Europe, that had these huge celebrations, and they would use these foods from these harvests, and they would cook them and have these big feasts, and then they would have these games, bobbing for apples, and really they would have the games that we have today, like bobbing for apples. Those existed way back then in the 1300s, somewhere around in there. And so they would have these big things where they would be like, we're going to have fun. We have parties, and you can dress up whatever you want to dress up to. And they would dress up in these fun little costumes and stuff. And that's what happened. So that's Halloween. So that's All Hallows Eve. And so it went from there. Okay. Fast forward to today where we have Halloween parties, we have candies, and the kids still go door to door doing all the stuff. The only difference in that tradition that's been tweaked is that it's in the 21st century, not in the 14th century, and it's modern. That's it. Christmas is the same way. Christmas was started for a certain reason, and it evolved in today to giving gifts and big, beautiful things. So get into all that another day. So what makes it happen makes it relevant. That's the difference between the .com and non-denominational churches to the Catholic churches. The relevancy makes it work. People are going to go to the churches that they can relate to, that they can feel like they've been fed, rather than going to the church that they're made to go to. Okay? Give you an insight about who I am. I was born Catholic, meaning that my mom was Catholic. When I was born, I was Catholic. There's no question about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just the way it was, just the way it is. And that tradition remains today. So if your mom or dad is Catholic and you're born, you're theoretically you're a Catholic and you're baptized as a baby, you have no say so in that. What are you gonna do? Say I don't want to be baptized and start speaking at the age of 6 months? No. So you are a Catholic, and so when I went to church growing up, I hated it. I couldn't stand church. I didn't want to go to church. It was just terrifying to me. It sucked. I had to dress up in a suit, man. Who dresses up in a suit on a Sunday morning? I mean, honestly. And so I was just like, I don't want to go. And I threw a fit every day, every time I could, I would go. But mom would drag me to go. And at the end of the church, at the end of the mass, if we go home, I'd be like, Mom, like, did you have fun? Yep, best part is when I left. I feel great now that I left. But I hated going, and so I grabbed to complaining so much that one day my mom says, all right, Dan, when you're 12, you can make the decision on your own if you want to go back to church or not. And she just told me that to shut me up because she got tired of me griping, right? Just like every mom or every parent does. They're going to tell their kid whatever they need to tell them to shut the kid up from griping so stinking much. And that's what she told me. All right, fine. I quit griping. But when I turned 12 years old, guess what? Dan remembered, and Dan was done. So this goes into how I'm able to be able to talk to you in a non-Catholic or non-denominational voice, is because in high school, I went to a non-denominational church. I know exactly what goes on in those churches, and that's why I'm able to tell you a lot about those churches, because I've been there. I've done that. I had that experience. I'm very open-minded, and when I went back to the Catholic Church, I was 30. So from 12 to 30, I didn't go to Catholic Church. The only time I would go to Catholic Church would be on the holidays for Christmas and Easter. But that was it. They called that in the church today, we call that a creaster. Christmas and Easter attendee. Creasters. They only show up during those because Christmas is the birth of Jesus and Easter is the raising of Jesus, where he died and he rose again on the third day, right? That's where he's crucified. So it was, so that's one time I went to church. And so when I went back to church when I was 30, I was like, all right, we'll give this a shot, see what happens. Well, lo and behold, almost 10 years later, I got married. It worked. So, all right. So there's something there, right? Where am I going with this? I don't know. But I like what I'm saying, because I'm pushing it all out there. Oh, right. So why am I able to talk to you on both angles? It's because I have a very, 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 very open mind about the church, about religion, about denominations. And I'm glad I do, because I see people that are there today, that go to the Catholic Church today, that are sadly closed-minded about religion, and they're very smart people. Yeah, they're very smart people, and they're able, and I tell people all the time, if you don't know, look, you have the freedom in America to research anything you want to research. Don't judge, don't jump to conclusions. Find out for yourself. And what do they say? No, I'm fine where I'm at. And I think in my head, I'm like, how can you diss a religion when you know nothing about it? How can you go toe-to-toe with somebody when you know nothing about it? Okay? There's one thing I love to do, and while I love to defend my faith, especially when people start blasting out what the history is of the church, and I'm looking at them like, I'm a history buff, and that's not the way it happened, dude. I'm sorry, but you are seriously wrong. You are seriously mistaken. That is not the way it happened at all, especially when they start talking history. I'm like, if you want to say you're this and that, you want to preach this and that, knock yourself out. But you start throwing in history in there, I'm right here. And so that's what it happens. So the churches today, yes, the Catholic Church is very conservative. The other churches are not. They're very relevant to for today's time. And that's what makes a difference. And that's what makes it work. That's what keeps people sitting in their pews, in their chairs, and gets people keep coming back. I've seen people come into the Catholic Church and I never see them again. Because they came in, they saw what they wanted to see, they got what they wanted to get, and it wasn't for them, and they went somewhere else. We'll never see them again forever. And especially if you live in a big metropolitan area, you'll never see that person again. In the small towns you will, but in a big metropolitan area, you'll never see them again. Especially if, the church they go to is 10 miles down the road. So that's pretty much it, man. Go to where you're fed. If you feel like you need to go down the road to a .com church or a non-denominational or even a Baptist church, knock yourself out. You have the freedom to do that. Nobody can stop you from doing that ever. And that's what I tell people all the time. If you don't feel like you're getting anything out of here, go somewhere else. Don't sit here. Don't be miserable. Move on. And so that's about it. I don't know how long we've been going on for, but folks, that's a Danout. And guess what time it is, my friends? It is music time.
Put your hands up open wide. Put your hands up side by side. Age don't matter, like race don't matter, like place don't matter, like what's inside. Let the kick drum kick one time. Breathe out, let your mind unwind. Eyes on the ceiling, looking for the feeling. Wide open, let your own eyes shine. Yeah, it's where the fight begins. Yeah, underneath the skin, beneath these hopes and where we've been. Every fight comes from the fight within. I am the war inside. I am the battle line. I am the rising tide. I am the war I fight. Eyes open, open wide. I can feel like a crack in my spine. I can feel like the back of my mind. I am the war inside. I get the feeling that we're living in sci-fi. I get the feeling that our weapons are lo-fi. Ain't no killer like pride, no killer like I, no killer like what's inside. Yeah, it's in the air we breathe. Yeah, it's in the blood we bleed. Beneath these dreams and what we see, we are the kids of the in-between. I am the war inside. I am the battle line. I am the rising tide. I am the war I fight. Eyes open, open wide. I can feel like a crack in my spine. I can feel like the back of my mind. I am the war inside. 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 Put your hands up open wide. Put your hands up side by side. Age don't matter, like race don't matter, like place don't matter, like what's inside. Yeah, every thought ordeal.